Sales Launch Coders, while we were waiting for everyone to jump on, just drop your questions in the chat box. That would be awesome. And we already have some questions. Awesome. Objections. So, all right, we'll talk a little bit about objections because you're not the only one that had that question this week. Nadia in our group also posted a question about objections and how best to overcome objections. So I will go over that with you guys. If you guys are watching from our group, please jump over into the main JPM sales partners where we're airing this live so I could see your comments. Okay, so let's get started. Monday Morning Motivator meeting. Everyone, come on in. We're going to start the week off right with all the best sales tips and inspiration for your business. I'm Jessica Magooch, your host, your hostess with the mostest. And I'm back from band camp. So you guys, I'm all revved up. I studied hot jazz for a whole week in New York with some of the best jazz musicians right now playing hot jazz, which if you don't know what that means, it's basically the period between like 1910-ish to like 1930-ish. When jazz was hot and all that, the New Orleans ragtime and blues and that transition from blues into jazz. And we ended with an awesome, we ended by opening up the Gotham Jazz Festival on Sunday at the Players Club, which is this ridiculously insane venue on Gramercy Park. And it's like tons, like Mark Twain was a regular there. I guess it was mostly and still is a theater venue. We played there and we opened up, but there's no permanent chairs. So we opened it up to dancers and we had like 50 swing dancers came out and we're swing dancing and we did our final, we each had a 15-minute set, the 6 bands in the camp. So it was a really fun time. And as you guys know from last week, I totally wanted to drop out because I was scared that I wouldn't do well. I went in for piano, but I went because I wanted to get better. So I'm glad I didn't drop out and I made it through. So later on, I'll share some lessons from band camp that I think apply to sales. Sound good? All right. First things first, take in your intentions. Remember for a moment, why the heck you're doing this business in the first place, right? Because it can get crazy. It can get busy. Business can be busy, right? Busyness. And we have to make sure that at least in the beginning of the week, you remember why you're doing this in the first place, because even things like overcoming objections get so much easier when you have that intention in mind of why you're out to help people in the first place, right? So all of that always has something to do with your sales success during the week. Okay. Got it? Awesome. That thing like on the first day that you opened your business where you were so excited to share with the world, rev that engine up again at the beginning of the week so you don't get sidetracked. Okay. Accountability. What were your numbers last week? So how many outbound marketing activities did you do? How many of those turned into leads? How many of those leads turned into discovery calls or consult calls, whatever you call them? And then how many of those turned into presentations or demos or consults? And then how many of those turned into sales? And finally, how many referrals did you receive? Go back to meeting 1 where I break down exactly what each of those phases of the sales cycle are. And make sure you're keeping track of your own numbers, right? I'm not your sales manager. I'm not going to make you submit them for me. I'm your coach. I'm just here to coach you through it, but it's all about you doing the work, right? But I can tell you it's a problem I see in all different size organizations is this problem of it's not just keeping track of the numbers so that you can improve, but it's the accountability that goes along with tracking the numbers. So it's 1, being accountable to yourself of like, what did I actually accomplish this week? And then having your team be accountable to you, right? If you have no idea, the one thing is, yes, you can use the numbers. And I say this often, like if you don't know what your numbers are, how do you know what you need to change to get to your goals, right? So you need to know what your numbers are. But the second part of that is the accountability factor. is being accountable to someone at the end of the week to say what you've done. Now, eventually, you'll be able to be accountable to yourself, right? And if you're already regularly keeping numbers and being accountable to yourself, congratulations, that's awesome. But most people don't, which is why I'm like, you'll hear me repeat it over and over, the importance. I've seen in very large corporations that I've sat in to help them with parts of their sales process that the accountability is a huge factor that's missing. And it actually gets worse the larger the company is. You would think it'd be the opposite, right? With technology and tools and everything, and, budgets and all that the accountability would be much stronger in a larger, Fortune 100 company. But actually, because there's so much money and the company's doing well, sometimes accountability can take a back seat. And then what happens is, overall you might be doing well, but it's not as good as you could be doing if the salespeople are actually accountable to their numbers and being held accountable and having checks and balances to make sure that the numbers that they're submitting and the numbers they're putting into the CRM are actually accurate numbers. Because unfortunately, that happens a lot too. You can ask them to report their numbers or, keep the CRM updated. But if no one is counter checking that and they're just paying out commissions and bonuses based on the salesperson's honesty in the CRM, when people are struggling, they might decide that one week or other they have to take advantage of that lack of accountability. So, and I've seen it happen many times. And it's unfortunate, people get desperate and then they do things that they wouldn't normally do, like report a sale that didn't actually happen or, report things twice because they made the sale in one quarter, but the payment came in another quarter. So these things happen, but we as leaders need to hold people accountable. So of course that stuff doesn't happen. It's actually less likely to happen in a smaller organization because you have, such a close touch with your salespeople. But I've seen it there too, where there's just no accountability. It's like the accountability is like, do your best every week. And that's a great concept, but how do you know what your best is if you're not tracking your numbers? So it's something to think about. All right. So whether you're working for yourself or you're growing a team, accountability is so, so important. And it doesn't mean being a jerk leader, like being mean, like militant. It just means that if people come to you because they want to learn how to make money and learn how to grow a business as a salesperson or as a coach or what have you, and part of that is helping them keep accountable to themselves, which begins with keeping accountable to you. Okay. Moving on to Marketing Minute. Wanted to share a marketing tip with you this week, and it's actually something that I learned at band camp. We were talking about ways to bring in hot jazz into your community and how to get gigs, right? So getting a gig is a sale, right? And for full-time musicians, the best kind of gig is a regular gig, right? Where you're on an off night of the week and every single week you're doing like a regular gig. So they were giving ideas of like how to get gigs or like how to work your way into a community. And this totally applies in sales into your target market. How do you work your way, into your target market so that you're seen as a center of influence? Because someone who starts up a jazz night, on a Tuesday night, and they're responsible for getting all the musicians and the people there, they're now seen as the center of influence. That's what you want to be in your circle, right? So it's ideas like starting your own networking groups, right? Starting a mastermind, starting a workshop. I know in Philly, there's someone that does like regular, like monthly, like free, it's like a free sales workshop or something for startups, right? And they just have breakfast. I don't even know if they give breakfast, but whatever it is, it's like they just created this place where people can collaborate and put themselves as a center of influence. So those are some ideas, like our marketing for the people who started recently. Their first marketing kit is networking. So in there, we say, like, if there's no networking event that's awesome around you, start one, right? Or start a workshop that helps your target market, and you're the leader of that workshop. So if your target market is like moms, right? Start a workshop like at a time that's convenient for moms, not at night when they have to put their kids to sleep, but start a workshop that's convenient for moms about, like, I don't know, how to eat, swapping recipes for your kids, like kid-friendly recipe swap or something like that. That's an awesome idea. And I just thought of it on the spot, but probably because that's not my target market. It's sometimes easier to think of ideas outside of your own market. So that's why our group, when you guys are in the group, like really communicate and collaborate with each other on ideas about how to reach your target market. Because some people might have ideas just because they're thinking outside of the box, and you're in the box because that's what you're doing all day. Okay, so that's my marketing tip for you guys. Let's move on to some questions before I leave you with some ideas from what I learned at Bandcamp. What do you say when someone says, "Thanks for the offer. I'm not in the market as I'm paying for other things, but would love to chat if maybe we're a good fit." Later. Okay. The later objection, right? So, and then Nadia, you had a question about, let me see if I can get Nadia's question up here. Okay, so let me address overall what objections are, right? So objections are different than questions. Why? Right? Like someone can pose a question, and it could just truly be a question like, how much does it cost? Or it can be an objection like, how much does it cost? Do you hear the difference there? So one of them is a simple question. Another is an objection. So an objection is a question or a statement that's laced with negativity, right? Some implication that they're not going to buy, or at least they're not going to buy today, right? So that's how we define an objection. And we go really in depth with this in the course, because objections is one of those things that salespeople feel like, if only I could overcome these objections, then I'd make every sale, right? But really, the objections are usually a product of a sales process that happened before or didn't happen before, right? So some errors in the sales process that not necessarily caused the objection. Like there's like 5 objections that people always have. And the best way to overcome them is to overcome them up front before they come up, right? So for instance, we know that customers always, right? Like you're not alone. Every product that you sell is going to have, people are going to have an objection to the price. They're going to have an objection to the timing, that it's not the right time. They're going to have an objection to, they might need can't make the decision by themselves. They need somebody else to make the decision, help make the decision with them. They're considering a competitor or price time. They don't actually have the need of the problem that you solve, right? Like that's probably a lot of people. They have the need, but they don't want to solve it. Right? They have the problem, but they don't want to solve it. So those are some of, those are like the typical objections that everybody's going to get. So we want to work those in ahead of time. And before I go into more depth about that, I want to reiterate that objections, or reiterate from the course because I didn't say it yet today. Objections, most times, are really the customer saying, and if you can remember this, every time you get objection is, I'm afraid to make the wrong decision. right? Anybody that took my free training, The Science Behind Why People Really Buy, they'll learn that the hardest thing to get someone to do is to take action, because we're naturally inclined to not take action, right? To stay still, to stay safe, because that's safety. Even if we have a problem, it's still the problem, the pain of the problem that we know is better than the pain of not having the problem or going through the trouble to solve it. Or worse, trying to solve it and making a mistake and making things worse, right? So people have a natural inclination to not want to buy. And every objection, if they have a problem and they want to solve it, every objection is another form of saying, I'm scared to make a wrong decision. Not necessarily I'm scared to make a decision, although that has something to do with it, but I'm afraid to make a wrong decision, because not moving forward is also a decision, right? So they're not afraid to make a decision. The decision is yes or no. But what they're really afraid of is making the wrong decision, right? Like, what if it doesn't work? What if I'm not good enough to make it work, right? Like, we've bought these things in the past and they haven't worked because the team doesn't want to collaborate on them. So talking about how this relates to these kinds of objections, Mary's specific objection was a timing objection, right? So one of the things that we teach in our, discovery calls is to ask a qualifying question. It's part of the qualifying process to make sure it's the right time. And if someone says, like, you know what, like, and this could apply to large corporations, like, we don't do our budget for another 6 months, but we want to get some more information now to see if we should consider you in the budget. Or if it's someone who's like an individual who's like, I just don't have the money right now to do anything, but I would like to get more information in case we have it is right in the future. So here's the thing about that. They're basically, some sales trainers teach that customers lie. Customers always lie. I don't teach it that way, because I think that's a terrible way to approach the market, right? Customers lie. And right, like, she could be lying and she could have a ton of money sitting somewhere. She just doesn't want you to take, she just doesn't want to like let you know that, because she doesn't want to buy something because she's afraid to make a mistake. So sometimes people do end up buying, even though they said that they didn't think it was the right time. But here's how you approach the timing situation. One is, if the person has told you it's not the right time, but more information, please, then you definitely do not want to give a full out presentation where you're closing out at the end. Okay? And that's two parts, presentation and close, neither of those, right? Because what we learn in that arc of the story that you're telling as a salesperson, the time that they're most likely to buy, where their emotional and logical factors of the way the human brain works are in play, is right after the time where you present your offer, where you outline what it is that's going to solve their problem. So whether it's right after you give your demo, right after you describe what's in your program as a coach, Mary, I know your business well. So right as you outline, like, here are the bullet points of what's included. Right after you give a demo, right after I have another student who sells hand dryers with advertisements on them, right? He's not active on Facebook, so he never gets to hear these things, but he's a private student. So after he demonstrates, like, shows them it, right? That's the presentation. In a dating scenario, right? Like, you want to create, like, you have to create a story. I often relate sales to dating, because you're not going to like send an email and ask to close the sale right in the first email, right? You're not going to be like, hey, I have this coaching program, give me $1,000 and, we can start on Monday. It's like, who are you? That makes sense to a lot of people, yet they jump too soon to other parts of the sales process before they should. So I often see cold emails that end with a request for time to chat or an appointment, right at the end of it, right? So you're actually jumping a step there, which is they have to say, I'm interested first, and then you can ask to speak with them. But also from the discovery to the presentation. So in your case, Mary, that's actually typically the same phone call, right? Like you're getting on a call, you're doing a discovery process, and then you decide at the end if you should do a presentation and close the deal. Sometimes you don't make a presentation and close the sale. In your specific case, because I know your business well, I would definitely take the opportunity to get to know people better, especially if they're in my target market, right? Why? Why would some people say this is a waste of time because they're not ready to buy? I never consider time with a prospect or a potential prospect a waste of time unless I don't approach the sales process correctly. So if I were going to get on that call and treat it like any other call and give a full presentation and close at the end, well, of course they're going to say no, right? They already told you they're going to say no. But what I would do is I would have like a 15-minute call where we just get to know each other and I'd get to know the needs of her business. And I know how your business is structured. You do a consult that goes into a presentation of your offer. I wouldn't do the consult until they've said that they're ready to take action. So my phone call would be more like a getting to know you, let me know more about your business, know about you personally. You get to know about me personally. You get to know about my background. I'll give you my 1-minute pitch, which we work on a ton in my course, which is like giving them what you have, which is, giving them the meat of what you do. And so they really understand how it applies to them, but not all the details. And I would just make it a 15-minute call where you say, and when you're ready, when you feel like you have, I would give them a price range. Our programs range from this to this. You might have a lower price offer as well as a high price. So you give them a range. Look, our prices range from this to this. When you're ready, the first step is we'll do a consult and we'll really dig into your business. And that's when you would do your consult. But I would definitely get on a 15-minute call with them and just chat. And if they continue to ask you questions, I actually take that as a buying signal, but I would want to clarify with them first. So let's say they keep asking you questions. Well, can you tell me like exactly what's in the program or what's exactly included? I would be like, I would love to go through all of that with you. Is now the right time for you to purchase something like that if it were to work for you? And then if they say no, like I would say something like, well, it's most appropriate to talk about it when it's time, when you're ready to make a decision and when you're considering other coaches and things like that, because my program might be different at that time. And I don't want to explain to you a program that might change or in some way by the time that, you're ready. Oftentimes you'll get people to convert anyway. So you have to go with the flow of that. If they go, you know what, actually, Mary, after speaking with you, I realize like I really can't wait another minute to get this going and I'll figure out how to pay for it. But give them a range ahead of time so that the price isn't a shock at the end. And so that big question, that suspense, like that's the big like fear factor in a sales presentation is what's the price? Like, oh, I'm really vibing with this person. I love what she's talking about. But what if she says it's like $20,000 and there's just like no way I can afford that, right? That's what they're thinking. So if you can give them an idea of like what the range is ahead of time, then they can relax about the price and really listen to what you have to say. And actually that allows you to, through the consult, it actually allows you to justify the price like as you're building out, because you're not asking them to buy right after you tell them the price. But as you continue your consult and then show them what the program actually includes, all that time you're justifying that price for them. So they're going in their head like, oh, like that sounded like a lot when she first said it, but now I really get like all the stuff that's included and how good she is at what she does. Got it? So how do you approach an objection though in general? The rule is empathize, not agree. Some people say agree. Don't agree with them. They can be totally wrong. But of course, they're never wrong. But if you empathize with them, meaning put yourself in their position and show them that you understand where they're coming from. Yeah, I totally get that. If your funds are tight, I'd be glad to. And then, so empathize with them, then acknowledge what they said. I understand funds are totally tight, and right now it might not be the right time for you. Definitely. And then offer, so if I was on the phone with them, it's easier. So I would then clarify the objection. So is it that you don't have the money right now, or you're not sure if you want to spend that money with me right now, right? Like I might actually want to clarify that what she said is exactly what I thought she said. And then she's like, no, I really don't have the money. Then you could say, well, I'm glad to get on a 15-minute call with you, and we could get to know each other, and I'll let you know more about what we do. And then at the end, if it makes sense, we can schedule another call to do a consult, and I can show you the full program. Or if not, we can schedule a time when you think you'll be ready to invest in your business. Sound good? End with a question, and she'll say, yes, of course, that sounds good, right? That sounds amazing. But any chance you have to strengthen and build a relationship with a prospect is always worth it, because relationships win. And even if they don't become a prospect, if you plant the seed for referrals, they'll refer you to people. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have zero money right now, but I'm in this, group of entrepreneurs, and I feel like everybody could really use this in that group. Awesome. Could I talk to your group, right? Or do refer me to people in your group, and I'll reach out, or I'll send out an email for you to share with your group. Things like that, but you have to ask for them. So you see, I broke down objections, right? I explained what they were. So you got a full lesson here. You explain what they were, really what they really are, how to overcome them. The best way to overcome them is up front. I explained the top 5 objections that every single salesperson gets all the time. So those are the ones you want to get them out of the way before the customer brings them up. It also shows that you get them, and they're going to feel more comfortable and confident in you because you anticipated what their objections are, because every single customer and person has pretty much the same objections, no matter what the product. And then how to approach it so that you're not letting the customer take the lead of the presentation of the sales process, but you're continuing to have the lead of the sales process. Okay. Even though the customer might think that they're the ones in control, that's cool. That's actually how you want it to play out. But you need to actually be the one that's orchestrating the sales process as a professional, knowing that the time people are most likely to buy is right after your presentation of the offer or the demo. So you need to orchestrate a sales process that they can buy at that time. So if they've told you they don't have the money, or they've told you I know I can't make a decision because Joe has to be on the call too, then don't do the presentation. But that doesn't mean you totally have to walk away either. That just means you add another get to know you coffee. I mean, I've there's times when I'm working with a client right now that I've done eight consults with him, basically paid consults, coaching sessions, things like that, and still haven't talked about an actual program because it hasn't been the right time. But I'll continue to build those relationships over coffee and get to really know his business, and he continues to get to know me. So I'll never consider that, a waste of time to spend time developing a relationship with a potential prospect, if you understand how it fits in the sales process, and of course, using it as an opportunity to gain referrals. Okay. Mary, especially in your business, I feel like these women are also going to be parts of groups of women that are in your target market. So leverage that, whether it's their local group or an online group or what have you, someone can endorse you, say I just had a call with her. She's amazing. There's a lot of questionable people especially in the online business, especially in online businesses. So when someone gets to know you personally and can vouch that like you're the real deal, it definitely helps you when they recommend you into groups like that. Does that help? Cool. I'm sure you'll watch the replay of this because I think you had to jump off. Okay. So real quick, before we go on, your motivation minute for the week, I want to talk a little bit about what I learned at band camp and how it applies to sales. Because one of the main things that we had lectures every day from some of the best people working in the industry right now. And one of them was all about like kind of the point of it, I guess, was the non-musical side of the business, right? Like how to get gigs, how to build regular gigs for your community, how to bring the music into your community. It's a sale, right? So I don't have any musicians right now working with me, but they should because I myself as a musician, I think like the reason why it's so easy to get gigs is because I'm great at sales. And it doesn't mean I'm great at closing, because closing's just like the cherry on the sundae, right? It's just the cherry on top when you've built a foundation, everything else is working right. Your marketing is professional, your follow-up, you respond quickly to things. So I just wanted to talk about some of the things they shared with us and how that can apply into sales. And I think the main takeaway was best in class. So best in class musicians want to work with other best in class musicians. And what does that mean? Does it mean you're the best trumpet player in the whole world? Not necessarily, although typically the best trumpet player in the whole world is also going to have a lot of these factors going on. But as far as professionalism, I see a lot of salespeople fail just because they're not professional. And what I mean by that is showing up on time, reliably, right? Making sure you're following up when you said you'd follow up. That means having systems in place to make sure you can follow up. For musicians, it means like if someone sends you a message or someone inquires about a gig and you respond and then you hear nothing back, that you actually follow up. For a salesperson, it means that the same thing, right? If a prospect shows interest and you send them, a message and then they don't respond, it's following up. And that can be difficult if you have messages in all different places, whether it's like text or, Facebook message or emails and phone calls and all that. But you really got to stay on top of all of those places where people can communicate with you to continue to follow up with them. If you had to say like the percentage of people that like send you one message and then, follow the process the same way that you would love them to, which is like get on a call, do this, do that, that'd be awesome. But it's probably 10% of the people that would actually buy from you. Those are like really hot prospects that they'll buy from. They're just like really ready. They almost don't need a salesperson to buy, right? You can only really screw it up at that point. But it's those other people that you need to continue follow up with that will make that difference of the other 90% of people who will buy from you. So best in class, being a professional versus an amateur. Even if you're working for someone else as a salesperson, treat it as your own business, right? Which means what? It's something that you continue to improve all the time. Best in class musicians, they have, they're reliable. They're always prepared, right? That means rehearsing. I've worked with musicians who thought that they were so good they didn't have to rehearse. And that's like the best musicians rehearse more than everybody else. That's why they're the best musicians, right? So the same is true for salespeople. I mean, let's not be amateurs about this. Let's practice what you're doing. Practice with your dog, practice with your spouse. It doesn't matter. Get into a group, get into my Facebook group so you can practice with each other. But practice, be prepared. Don't just walk into a presentation and assume since you've done 100 presentations before that you're prepared for this presentation. Take the time. Like, I have a list of all the things I have to do before any kind of presentation. So I make sure I don't forget anything that I need to do to prepare. So looking up make sure you're researching everyone that you're meeting with. Make sure you're researching the company, any recent news that they've had. Making sure you know how to get to the place, how long it's going to take, and the traffic of the time that you need to go there, right? And then allowing for all the extra time so you're not late. All that to be prepared. Understanding, like, anticipating some objections that they specifically might have, and like specific ways that you can help them apply your product into their company. Creative ways. Now, you might not ever even use them on the presentation. It might go totally different, but you have that preparation in your back pocket for when you need it. I used to even be prepared with referrals. I remember my second appointment, my boss told me if I didn't come back with referrals, I couldn't submit the application for the sale. And I was like, what? That's illegal, isn't it? He's like, I don't care. So no, he didn't say I don't care. He said to me that the person didn't really buy. If you asked them for referrals and they said they weren't willing to give you any referrals, then you really didn't make a sale, right? You just got an application. So I would go in prepared with photocopies out of the yellow pages. Yes, we still use the yellow pages back then, for suggestions of people that they could refer me to in their own industry, because since they were active in their industry, they probably knew some of their competitors as well. So being prepared, always improving upon your skills, right? Like, I went to band camp to get better at my skills. It makes sense, right? You want to get better at golf, you hire a coach or you take a class or something, right? But I think a lot of salespeople don't want to well, first of all, they might not have found a teacher that they feel like they can vibe with yet, because I get it. A lot of sales training is very aggressive, in your face, but also it's and so you don't want to be that, so you don't want to learn from people like that. I totally get that. I was exactly in the same position. But how do you improve on your skills? What's the last sales book you read? When I do sales interviews, I always ask, what's the last sales book you read? And when did you read it? Because professionals are always improving upon what they're delivering. And if your main role is sales, then you better be improving on it all the time. And if it's not your main role, even more so, because you don't get as much time to do it out in the field, you always need to be honing in on your skills. And then next level is hiring a coach. Like, every great professional has a teacher that's better than them, or a coach that's better than them, right? I have 3 coaches right now. I would never to me, that's such an important part of, I could never tell someone to hire a coach if I don't hire my own coaches, right? I'm a sales coach. So always make sure you have a coach, someone who's better than you, who has created the path ahead of you, that can teach you the ways, whether that's technically or, the way of the business or the way to be. And also, one huge thing that they shared with us was when they get asked to do a gig, I'm talking about the best jazz musicians right now, when they get asked to sit in for a gig of someone that they don't know personally, they just call their friends and they go do you know this? How is this guy? Do you know him? And they're either, yeah, he's great to work with, or I wouldn't do it. And so your reputation is everything. And notice he didn't ask, how good of a player is he, right? He asked just about his character and who he is, because no one wants to be in a room of rehearsals with that negative person, right? Or that unprofessional person that's not prepared and what song? How does that song go? Those kind of things. So that same thing is true in sales and business, right? People will refer you as a person before they refer anything else. And that goes back to my lesson on referrals, which is they refer you. They don't refer the company. That is such a misconception, that when you get a referral, it's for your product. It is not for your product. It's for you. It's for working with you, because as a professional, as a consultant, you're an expert in your industry. You're coming not only with your product, but the knowledge of all the competitors' products and a really deep understanding of the problem that your customer's having from a holistic viewpoint, not just from their viewpoint. So that's a huge value to add. And that's what people are going to refer, because they know that even if the product's not right for them, spending time with you is worth it. Okay. So I really want to bring that back into the sales, that people don't refer the product, they refer you. And then two more things I brought away that feed into sales, because everything does, right? Sales is life. Is realize your strengths and expand upon them. So I went to band camp to expand my piano playing skills, because I felt like that's my weakest point. Like, I'm a singer and a composer and a piano player, and probably been taking piano lessons longer than everything else, but I have a lot of weaknesses when it comes to piano playing. So I thought I would go to this camp, and not only would I get over some of my fears of performing on piano, and soloing and improvising and all of that, but I would also, bring some of the concepts of learning about jazz into writing, or bringing elements into my own music. And I did learn that. But I chose not to do the vocal track because I thought I'd learn more in the piano track and it would be more of a challenge. Well, what happens? I get there, and I'm there. The vocalists were always separate. So when we would have jams and stuff, people would be like, "Does anyone sing? We need a vocalist?" And I was so surprised to find out that most of the musicians don't sing. In my head, I always thought like, well, singing's easy for me, therefore, it must be easy for everyone else, and it's not as valued of a skill. Come to find the opposite is true. Most musicians would be like, I would never sing in front of people ever. I'm so scared to sing, or I have a terrible voice, or what have you. And the vocalist really leads the band. So after this whole week of like piano and blah, 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 at the end, I finally learned my lesson. And I was supposed to improvise a solo, which was pretty long. It was so long that I was like getting bored in the solo, because my skill level is not there enough to like be super creative with it. So I just started singing in the middle of my solo, and that like made the whole song. That instead of playing the whole time, I was like, I started playing, and then I got off and I clapped and I just sang. And in a song that didn't have a vocalist, that was super refreshing for people. So in sales, what are your strengths, or whatever part of the business is? What are your strengths? Spend your time expanding on those strengths and expanding your skills so you can be best in class in that part of it. And it's not to say that you don't have to learn the other parts of it. You do, but learn it enough that you can get somebody else to do it for you. So that you're constantly like doing what you're good at in your business and having other people do the rest of it. And I would say for a CEO of a company, definitely sales is one of those things that you need to have like advanced skills on before you can hire salespeople, because you need to know enough to train them. And nobody's going to come in like, as much as a salesperson could sell themselves, that they could come in and just, build a sales strategy from scratch and then go out there and be successful. Like, it's actually a very limited, it's a really special skill set that's also very expensive, right? So you need to be the one that really paves the way in that regard, so that you could teach it to somebody else. If you're going to be a CEO, one of the things you need to be really good at is sales, because you're always selling. You're selling your product to begin with. You're selling to get key employees to join your team. You're going to be selling to investors. You're going to be selling to the board of directors. Like, CEO to me is basically like the lead salesperson of the company. So if you don't want to be CEO, you can hire somebody else to be CEO. That happens a lot of times in startups. Like if it's, the person started, it's like a technologist and they don't know how to run a business and it's not their strength, then they hire someone to be CEO. That happens all the time. So just know your strengths and really expand on getting those better and have a working knowledge of everything else so that you can, especially as the head of the team, so that you can manage and communicate with those departments as well, right? That's why like an MBA would always include like accounting, like you'd need to know accounting and you need to know marketing and you need to know, employee benefits and things like that. Not because you're going to do all those things, but you need to be able to manage all those things. And then finally was focus. I realized at dress rehearsal that the songs seemed to move like 3 times as fast when we were on stage and under the lights of performance and the pressure of performance. And so this certainly applies to the sales presentations, right? Like you can have an hour-long presentation and you walk in and you feel like you walked out 5 minutes later, but you were there for an hour. So I was just going to say, maybe I should figure out why it feels like time speeds up so much in that moment. So we would practice the songs and the songs were the tempo they were, and they were the same tempo on stage. Like the drummer kept the tempo. It wasn't that the songs were actually faster, but to me, it was like we were at my solo faster than it felt like we were in practice. So I would miss it, or like someone else was someplace else faster than I thought. And everything was just moving so much faster. And I thought, the only way I'm going to get through this, like it shouldn't be faster. And I thought of my lessons from martial arts, which was the ability to slow down time and doing that through focus, right? So when you're completely focused in the moment, one, time slows down, at least relatively, right? So time slows down so that you can really like execute a technique properly. The other awesome benefit to that is time slows down so that you can enjoy the moment more, right? So if you're thinking about playing a song, you're just thinking about getting to the end, which is so true for salespeople, right? They're just like, just get me to the end, right? I just want this to be over. Then time's going to fly and it'll go more quickly than you're able to like pull out, draw upon all of your sales training. And you ever walk out of a presentation and be like, oh my God, I knew what I should have said to that objection. Why didn't I say it when I was in the meeting, right? And you go to bed and you think, oh my God, I should have said this. I should have said that, right? It's because time was sped up so much in that process for you that you didn't have time to access the things that you know to do. So same thing like when playing piano, you could be, in a song and it's like, wait, my fingers aren't moving fast enough to get the notes out that I wanted. But if you have, or to like think about what you wanted to do. But if you can slow down time, then you'll have the ability to think in the moment of what you need to do next. Same for martial arts, hugely important, right? Because if you don't do it, you get hit in the face and you learn your lesson really fast. You should probably focus, be in the moment to slow down time in order to really use all of the techniques in your toolbox. And if you want to learn more about that, we went over that in depth in, I don't know if it was meeting 4. It was the one with Vinny Rawazzi, my dad. And we had the beach in the background. I have to look up what meeting number that was. But we went really into depth into the science of focus and how to slow down time by focusing. So go check that out because that totally applied. And then I purposely did that going into the final performance. I said that, I need to focus and be totally in the moment, absorb everything that's going on in the audience. Like the nerves want you to like get it over with as fast as possible, but that doesn't actually help you do your best. So go in and absorb the audience. I looked at that, Steinway logo and I was like, I am playing the Steinway on the main stage at the Players Club in New York. And I'm like, this is a moment I need to remember and experience. And then I did that like with every note of the song. I was like being in the moment. That means not so focused on what I'm doing on the piano, but it means like tuning into all the other players on stage, right? Tuning into your customer, all the people in the room, right? Really connecting with all of those people, connecting with the audience. So it's not me and my piano, right? I'm like looking out into the audience to make sure they're like with me and they're vibing with me. Bringing that into your sales presentations, so what does that look like? It looks like making eye contact with every person in the room, having a personal connection with each person in the room, right? Pointing out like, Joe, you'll really appreciate this part because you remember you said that thing about that. This is where we're talking about that, right? Engaging them. If you're just trying to fly through it and get through it as fast as possible, you don't get to do those things that are so important. So I would consider it a success by all means. I didn't fail terribly. I didn't like walk off the stage crying or anything like that. I actually did my solos pretty well, was happy, but it was all about staying in the moment. So if there's a wrong note, you can get to the right note quickly and it doesn't fly by too fast that you can't like course correct or engage and ultimately end up with a successful outcome. So I'd love you to think about those things as you apply them into your business. We went over a ton today, so I hope you have time to digest all of this. We went over the importance of accountability, some marketing tips on how to get things started in your community. We did practically a full lesson in overcoming objections, though we could go way more and we can go talk about objections all day long. And we learned about, what I learned in band camp that you could bring back into your sales process. Being best in class, being a true professional, being the best that you can be in your skill set, knowing your strengths and expanding upon those, and hiring people to do the rest, practicing, hiring a coach, continuing education, and focus in order to stay in the moment and be your best at all times. So bring those into your week today. And I would love to hear back how any of these things have helped you specifically this week in your sales process. All right, I'm going to be signing off now. Bye, everyone on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else.